Unsere Uni, or Uni Blend. It's my favorite project for this nomination. Many of you might know about this project. It's about the university protest movement in the last year. It originally started with a few students that occupied space at universities in Vienna, and it spread rapidly through the internet all over Austria and also across the border. They used Twitter, they used Facebook, they used streaming media. They had discussions at the auditorium in Vienna, for instance, with thousands of people watching simultaneously the debates. And what the most interesting thing for me is that it's not just an online movement, and it was not just an online community, the online digital community. It was also a very active physical community. They had 20,000 people walking through the streets of Vienna. They had thousands of people involved in the protests at the auditorium, for instance, and lots of people organized themselves in groups. They were cooking, they were debating, they were discussing. This was a really great grassroots movement, and one of the things I think is very much remarkable about this project is that these were people aged 19, 20, 21, also very young people, and they kind of invented a new form of social political movement with their experience from online communities. So it was not just a copy of the 68 protesters or of the late 90s student protest. It was a way to integrate their experiences and the way they organized themselves, the way they organized the protest, the communication via internet, via Facebook, via Twitter, via streaming media. The way they do this, they adapted it to this social movement, and it also had, although it is collapsed later, it also had a very huge impact. It has enormous media coverage, and also it was one of the reasons why education and education policy is a really big issue now in politics and also in the media.
All right. So this is a Voice of Cabrera, which is a second layer that's on top of Map Cabrera, which is the project that won. I just looked at the internet statistics actually, and right now there are 1.8 billion users on the internet, and there's 6.8 billion humans on Earth. And I think as a jury we were thinking, as more of these next 5 billion internet users come online, how are communities going to represent themselves online? And increasingly we see that they're using Facebook, they're using Twitter, they're using all these kind of mega corporate platforms, which makes it easier to be online and to represent yourself online. But then you're also giving your data to corporations, and you don't have as much freedom and openness and sharing that the internet was built on, that it's been using for the past 20 years of the World Wide Web. So Map Cabrera, it uses OpenStreetMaps, which is like the open source Wikipedia-based Google Maps. And they've used, I think there are 13 residents of Kibera, which is a slum outside of Nairobi. And they're using GPS devices to make their own map. So you can see it's a really detailed map of what Kibera looks like. And Kibera is actually not even represented at all on Google Maps. It's just a blank gray space. There are a couple of roads outside of it. And maps are really power, you know, you're asserting your visibility onto the world by being represented on a map. So these 13 residents of Kibera, they're going around, they're using GPS devices, and they're making an OpenStreetMap, on top of which they're building all sorts of other things. They're reporting their news on top of the map, they're doing an electronic voter registration drive, and we just think that it's pretty neat that this new community that was not really online last year or 2 years ago are now using open source tools to represent themselves online.
They have worked over decades, and I think the first 20 years nobody took them serious. In the very beginning they became famous for hacking banks and for like being on the border to the illegal stuff, but always, yeah, trying to show what's going on, trying to show what is not secure. And yeah, over the 90s they became more and more powerful, also influencing the politics. And right now they have like a very high good position. They are asked by politics to counsel. They have written a couple of recommendations for the Supreme Court to judge or to give recommendations on certain laws, and based on their expertise. And of course, it's like, I think it's now about 4,000 members, and it's a larger group around. It's all, the whole open source. I don't know, many things we use today. I mean, it's not all them, but it's a very large field of these developments, which we use today, which is based in that grassroots bottom-up movement from all these years. So I'm very pleased to have them for the Golden Mica, and simply thank you.